So thank you. Welcome to our panelists. We did have one other panelist that we had planned. Unfortunately, Brett could not make it at the last minute. I think his boss or something called an important meeting that he had to attend. So he sends his apologies and regrets for not being here. At this point, we have some questions that we would like to ask, and I have prepared some in advance, and hopefully those things will be of interest to all of you. And then at the end, we'll have some, I'll turn over the mic to everyone out here, and if you have questions, we'll be able to, I heard a little bit of feedback, so I'm going to move away from that. You'll have the opportunity to ask questions as well. So first question, and again, fairly informal. If you have an answer, great. If you don't, there's a couple of mics, and so jump in as you feel appropriate. So first, I'd like you to provide an overview of your center, who it serves, and what part of the overall company mission it delivers.
Great. First off, thank you for having us here at Hereford House. I've certainly made a full circle in my career. I was actually one of these servers just about 10 years ago, and was actually serving a number of corporate people, especially during the fourth quarter season when they would come here and eat. So instead of me serving you today, I'm going to help you better understand what we do for a living at Easy Cash, also known as ACQ Holdings. We have two different locations. We have one location now off of 8900 State Line Road. That houses about 45 employees currently. It will be able to hold about 75, so we're still growing into that space. We have another call center out of 151st and Metcalf, being held out there at a law firm. And we have about 8 agents out there. We have 5 in sales, and we have 3 in the recovery specialist seats over there. So in total, we've got about 53 total employees. One thing that would be ignorant for me not to address today is that there is a black eye on this industry in particular, especially in this area of concern. Geography, we were speaking about, Lenexa, Overland Park. This has been the corridor for short-term lending for quite some time. It is our duty as Easy Cash ASAP, with my fine group that I brought with me today, to actually be able to provide somebody with a service that is somewhat affordable, and at the same time being able to educate that client at the same time so that they can take away using our product, but also becoming financially less stressed. And how we do that is we create promotional offers. We really try to go above and beyond with just helping good people in difficult financial times. That is a slogan that when I was an agent selling these types of loans, I actually realized I was helping more people like myself or my family or my community than I was helping the, let's say, the owner of the business become wealthy. And with that being said, we've come up with a product that we have offered many U.S. citizens. We have lent out over $20 million over the course of the last 5 years. We have a $4 million current portfolio. And one thing that I like to say we pride ourselves on is the returning business of our customers. So one thing I can say statistically is 90% of the time when a customer pays off of our loan, within 90 days we have that customer coming back and reusing our service again. So that right there should speak volumes to everybody in the room as to when you can treat somebody fairly and equally and educate them and be transparent. Even if it is a high dollar loan, it is important that everybody has access to these types of loans so that they can utilize them for the time of need.
So I'm with Alliance Data, and we're a marketing and loyalty company that serves over 155 brands. We have 9 call centers and about 9,000 associates. So what I do is I'm over the customer experience, and we're looking to kind of improve those interactions with our card members, cementing the loyalty to the brand through all the way through acquisition, through servicing the accounts, and if needed, through collections.
Thanks. I'm Sean Hoy. I'm with Brio RX, which is a mail service pharmacy. So we compete with Express Scripts or CVS Caremark. And then we have locations, 4 national sites in the United States. My wife doesn't give me any sympathy when I have to go. It's Las Vegas, San Diego, or La Jolla, as I like to call it, Louisville, and then Kansas City. We also have an onshore vendor that we use. It's Alorca, and they're operating on the East Coast for us. And then we have a huge presence in Cebu, in the Philippines, and in Manila, some stuff in India, but no voice. And part of the United Healthcare family, and our core offering is we are taking orders for people's very egregious prescriptions for our pharmacy. So it's going to be, specialty pharmacy is going to be stuff you're not going to get at a local pharmacy. It's going to be chemo, HIV transplant meds. Really, so for every 100 utilizers of a health plan, only 2% would use a specialty pharmacy. But at the same time, we are 45% of the revenue of the pharmacy with that 2%. So we have very high-end drugs. They average about $4,500 a month. And it's just stuff that keeps people's life sustained, typically. So it's kind of one of those, we're in kind of an interesting spot because I like what Brian was saying about, our motto is helping people be well, but there's a big stigma on the expense and the cost of medications and trying to find our niche on how we help people be well while we make money, but not feel guilty about it, so.
Very good, thank you. So what an interesting mix we have of both the types of centers and the products or solution services they provide, as well as the size. However, I don't want you to think for a moment that that's what is representative of the industry, right? Because the reality is there are many, many more centers that are at the size of Brian's than there are of Kim and Sean's. And yet, the problems and the issues that they manage are, I'm going to say, virtually the same. And I think that'll come up in this next question. So now we want to talk a little bit about KPIs, the things that you use in your center to measure performance, and how has that changed? Because you've all been in the business for quite some time, and have things changed?
If I could start with the second question first, how things have changed. When I first became a call center manager, that was how you received recognition, was to top off your KPIs, was to be able to show your boss that you were above average, you were responsible, you were able to hit those KPIs day in and day out and create a product around it. And that's great, and especially when you're running a third-party call center, those things are necessary. But for a first-party call center, once I gained access of the controls for more of the training mechanism, those benchmarks became more organic, meaning the culture that we provided, the training that we provided, we were reaching those KPIs organically. So there was no stretch to get there. What we noticed then thereafter was there was new KPIs to be measured. The new KPIs to be measured specifically for my industry are going to be things like speed to lead. It's a very competitive market. So within 30 seconds or less, once we get acknowledgement that the customer is waiting for an application or to be worked, we have a 30-second goal in-house to make sure that we're reaching base with that customer. If we don't, there's a chance that somebody else would or could. So that's very important. And unfortunately, in this industry, I've consulted for about 8 other companies, specifically in this corridor. They're not doing things at real time. So what happens is they're buying new leads, and then all of a sudden, they're getting to work that new lead within 5 to 10, 15 minutes down the road, and they're missing out their opportunity. So that was one of the major things that I took away. Another, we got away from call handle and we got away from talk time. One thing I would like to say is, if you have a sick cat and you're on the phone with a customer, you shouldn't be telling the customer about your sick cat. But if your customer has a sick cat, you shouldn't be asking them, well, is there anything else I can help you with today? I mean, you have to engage in that a little bit. You have to engage in the idea that you want to suffice the customer at ease. We're dealing with people's financial information, their social securities. This is something that people want a little bit of rapport around, and of respect and responsibility. So speed to lead. One thing that I would say KPI that's oftentimes not referred to is attendance. The way I bake my pie is with all ingredients. If I don't have everybody there, I don't have all my ingredients. My speed to lead can be negatively impacted, and I have a 0-second hold time. So if we were to call the call center right now, we'll have an English-speaking 0-second hold time immediately. I pride myself on that. I want to make sure that we have a business that harnesses those models so that people aren't festering on hold. So attendance is very important to us. The last thing I would say, and probably the most important thing that we measure, is the quality of the interaction between the customer service representative and the customer on the phone. Because I'll take the extra 3 to 5 minute phone call if it meant that the quality of the interaction was superior than that of our competition. As I mentioned earlier, 90% of our customers are coming back, and that is for these very reasons. It's for the reasons that we are not just telling the customer, hey, do you want to take a $1,000 loan instead of the $500 you're requesting? We're asking the customer, hey, what's your purpose for the $500 loan? And perhaps they only need $300. We don't incentivize, we don't bonus in my call center, so there's no real reason for me to have a KPI that overshadows the quality of the engagement with the customer. So I would say the most important thing for me is the quality. We want to be able to bring that exceptional customer service on a daily basis, and the only way we can do that is if I have quality members bringing out that quality message to the rest of the.
So I've been in the call center industry for a really long time, and 19 years with Alliance Data. This is my 4th call center, and I will tell you that when I started, everything was all about productivity and AHT. Everything was AHT. And so that gave you some unintended consequences, like people hanging up on customers because it would shorten their AHT. So I will tell you, in today's world, we really focus on the customer experience, and that's measured through customer feedback. Also, we're introducing a new tool, Nexidia from Nice Analytics, which is going to give us a sentiment score. The benefit to that is you're going to be able to get all of your calls measured versus just those that customers decide to give you feedback. Right now, in addition to, it's interesting that you talked about attendance, because we just added that as a measure for our associate ranking. So it's about the customer experience, it's about their attendance, and then it's also about call efficiency. So that's really focusing on the non-productive time with cardholders. So kind of your after-call work time or even your hold time. But talk time is not measured at all. So that's kind of like an associate boon. But those are the things that I think are the most significant differences between the old world and today's world.
Yeah, it's amazing. We're fairly similar, I think, philosophy-wise, across the 2 previous answers here. I've been around so long where we used to sometimes celebrate making our KPIs answering the phone on time, and then we finally woke up about 10 years ago and say, duh, everybody else is doing that. How you differentiating yourself to your customer, right? And we would throw parties because we answered the phone in less than 30 seconds and all this stuff, and pretty naive perspective. And so as we've kind of pivoted and gone into Net Promoter Score and measuring the success of our value prop to our customer by their voice, it's changed our dynamic a lot. We removed AHT. We've never been a big AHT tracker in a specialty pharmacy because of what was said here is we don't want to get a cancer patient off the phone. So we use, and some people call it a different thing, it depends on what phone system, occupancy or utilization. And so you could be literally on one call. Our goal is 85% a day. You could take one call for 405 minutes a day and you would make goal because you would be occupied for 85%. And what counts for our occupancy is time speaking on the phone or waiting and available. Everything else counts against you, so I don't have to do any kind of IEX management where you're going to a meeting and stuff like this. I got rid of all that whole team that did all of the exceptions and all that stuff, and we put them on the phone. It was just in a very competitive industry, and we couldn't afford to kind of track that. And so that actually has resonated really well with our employee base because it's more employee friendly as well, because you're not beating them up over productivity. And in our world, it sends the wrong message because we're helping people be well, be faster. It just doesn't resonate that way. And then lastly, the whole pivot, we pivoted the last year to Net Promoter Score, both from a UES survey at the end of the call, which is more transactional for that one transactional. Can you be nice for one transaction? And then we have an NPS score from our marketing survey that, we survey 500 members a month that tells us how we're doing overall. And both of those have gone up almost 10 basis points this last year, just with a change of focus of letting our employees, we call them patient care coordinators, know that's important. And we play it up a little. We don't want to be a Kodak. We don't want to be a GE. We don't want to be irrelevant. But if you don't take care of your customers, we used to measure our success wrong. Now it's about our customers, and then it gives me more energy to go to work. Similar to what Brian is saying, is we want to do it right, as opposed to kind of just getting it done.
Thank you. Sean, there was something you and I discussed when we were planning this session, and I just thought he had a brilliant answer, because you think of organizations, large organizations, and they have big budgets, right? Many of us have small centers, and how do you achieve the things that the big centers do, because we have little budgets? And one of them was how you measure first call resolution. And it was pretty inexpensive to implement, and I thought just brilliant.
Yeah, yeah, it's probably cheating because I didn't want to pay our telephony vendor for it, but we actually do it in two ways. We actually, if you authenticate through our IVR, we have analytics that will let us know if you've called us more than 3 times in the last 10 days, and we send you to a different team. We send you to a tier 2 team that has different tools. And in this day and age, I broke the rule and I've given inbound agents a direct dial line with a voicemail, so that they don't have to call back and tell Vince. Vince doesn't have to tell a story 3 times, so that then once they identified as a repeat caller, which is the inverse of first call resolution. But the way our members, even if they don't authenticate, is we have a question in our IVR is it's as simple as, have you called about this issue before? And people answer that question one way. Sure, some of them might say, yeah, if I say yes, they're going to help me better or something like that. But in general speak, we've been able to kind of glean that we're doing about an 80% first call resolution without buying a package or anything. And that's our true north now. So it doesn't matter what it is because that's our barometer that we're measuring our success off of going forward. Big success of getting reduced escalations, senior escalations, by having that repeat caller team. And our goal this year is to go for 2 calls in 10 days and then eventually 1 call in, more than 1 call in 10 days. Just in the space we're at, most people need their medications in 5 days. And if they're calling us, think about the last time you called somebody 3 times, you're going to be pissed, right? So that's the way we're trying to go against our squeaky wheels or the issues that aren't working. And then we track all of that, and then we're changing the stuff upstream, what's generated that.
Excellent, thank you. Isn't that brilliant? Because it is very hard to do that if you try and go into your CRM and pull that data out. Really expensive, but just ask the question up front. And Brian, there was something we discussed as well when you were talking about speed to lead, and I don't know if you touched on it, but to me, when I hear that, I'm thinking service level, right? What percentage of the calls do you answer in 30 seconds or less? Can you, in front of the group, what is your speed to lead? How quick do you respond?
So our speed to lead generally is about 5 seconds or less. We always have a live agent ready to rock and roll, either to answer the phone or work a new lead. The way we have it measured is if you were to go on, let's say, everybody's probably familiar with the Money Mutual type of campaigns that you see on TV where it's like, hey, did your car break down? They've got Montel Williams as a spokesperson. Did your car break down? Do you need groceries? All that is a broker website. So when you go there and fill out your application, that information is actually being sent down a ping tree for a lender that can actually help you. We are at the top of that ping tree where we pay the most amount of money to see it first. So with that being said, the customer is filling out the application, hitting enter. It is then getting sent to my call center directly. Once we hear that doorbell chime, which we know that means a new lead is waiting, we basically call that new lead right away. The benefit of that is the customer immediately is caught off guard, but by surprise, a delightful surprise. I'm in a time of need, I need this now, and here's my phone ringing within 2 seconds of me clicking that submit button. So it is very important for us, not only just to set the tone about how we are quick, we're efficient, and obviously if our name is Easy Cash, it would be ridiculous if we weren't easy. So with all that being said, we have a little bit of pressure to make sure that the customer feels that same environment that we can set for them. But honestly, Marcus can tell you, if I hear that dinger ringing for more than 30 seconds, there's a problem. Somebody's not in place. Then I start looking at, okay, who's on break that shouldn't be? Who's in the restroom that's too long? Who's at lunch that shouldn't be, et cetera, et cetera. So definitely within, I'd say, 5 to 10 seconds, we're actually making that outbound call. And somebody's generally by the phone because they just filled out an application. So they're just as quick to, hello? And it's really interesting to get that feedback from the customer where it's like, thank you, you guys are super quick and efficient. So.
Excellent. Isn't that crazy? And with less than 25 agents, he's achieving that. And many organizations we see, they struggle with 30 seconds. They struggle with 45 seconds. And here he's getting it done with so much less. Certainly something to be proud of.
Thank you. Last thing on that, my Cole, who is my recruiter, who's here with us today, he also operates this way while recruiting. And I want people to understand that in this room because recruiting nowadays has changed dramatically, especially with millennials, which is one of our questions that we have later. You have to be recruiting at real time. So, I'm not going to give up how Cole is doing it, but at the same time, when there's a person that applies for us and we have an opening, we are calling them in the same hour that they've applied, sometimes within the same 10 to 15 minutes that they've applied. And we have interviews set up within the first hour of that application being out there. We have people hired within 3 days of filling an application. I have a lot of pride in that because I have a lot of big companies in front of me right now with bigger logos and brands. That's my way of getting the best of the best off the top. We've been able to out-hustle even the competitive groups that are trying to recruit for us. So we've actually, okay, you want to recruit for us, let's do so. And we've been able to out-recruit them as well. So at real time, I think, is something that we do across the board, not just with our leads.
Gosh, what a brilliant idea, huh? Imagine that, winning on customer service and having the best service, right? So in talking about things that you're proud of within your organization, and I know everybody has great teams and wonderful customers, but I'd like you to share with our esteemed group here today things that you're proud of that perhaps are changes that you've implemented or things that have occurred. And again, the whole point of this is I'd like for you to each be able to bring one thing back to your center today that you can implement that'll help it, because then the whole meeting's worth it.
First off, I would like to start with the idea that from our other vendors, we've been called a unicorn in this industry for various reasons. We've also been called the Chick-fil-A brand of this industry, which I am very proud of as well. We take the extra time and effort to make sure that every customer feels welcomed, educated, and welcomed back again. And that's something that we take a lot of pride in. But to be honest with you, if we're talking about one-dimensional here, one of the things that I'm most proud about, and I own a consulting company and I go out in this area locally and I really try to push this message, is instead of becoming salespeople or collections agents, really becoming problem solvers or solution experts. So today I would like to demonstrate that in front of you, if that's okay. If I could, Ms. O'Keefe. If you could just randomly tell me 3 consecutive numbers between 1 through 5, and just say it out loud, please. Yep, in a row. Okay, out of 1, 2, 3, just go ahead and tell me 2 numbers and say it out loud, please. Any 2. Okay, if you had 1, 2, and 3 in a set and you took away your 1 and 2, what is left? Okay, out of hearts, diamonds, clubs, and spades, just tell me 2 suits, any 2 suits. Okay, out of hearts and diamonds, just tell me 1 of them and say them out loud. Okay, so your final number was 3 and your final suit was hearts. Does everybody see that? Okay, most people would assume this is a magic trick. What it really is sales. I'm selling you that solution, and I'm giving you the questions that I need you to answer so that I get the right answer. So what we've become is problem solvers or solution experts. We don't, and some people look at it as magicians. When we get off the phone, people are like, wow, this is incredible. This is what J.D. Power Award winning type of call centers are doing. Well, it would be ignorant for me to be the leader of this organization and not being put up front some of the type of ways of helping a customer without actually selling to a customer. You know, in this industry, like I said before, most people are incentivized versus bonus. So they'll get you in the doors at $10 an hour, they'll give you a bonus, and they're gonna incentivize you to tell Ms. Smith when she asks for $500 that she should take out $1,000. That is where a lot of this issue is arising in this industry. So what we've done differently is we hire in at $15 an hour to start, we give them the bonus up front, and we say, look, only thing I need you to do is be able to connect with this customer. We make enough money off this product, but make sure that they understand the benefits of our product. So that way they get the idea that if I'm in need, this is the company I prefer to do business with. So long story short, I'll pass the mic.
Wow, I've got to follow that. So there's actually 2 questions that you had asked on this, Vince, and I want to talk to them both. So the thing I'm most proud about with our organization is probably our culture and the philanthropic support that we provide back to the communities in which we live and work. So it's one of our core components, and it's something that we eat, live, and breathe. So right now we're in the middle of our Adopt a Family campaign, and we're working very closely with Children's Mercy Hospital. The second part of the question is, what is troubling you or something that you want to change? And I would say the thing that is troubling me the most within the industry is, as we're becoming more technology driven, our easier things are leaving our care centers. So right now we have only about 10 to 15% of our card members actually call us when you look at the calls to statement ratio. Out of that, only about 70%, well, out of those that call us, 70% term in the IVR, or they go to account center. So that leaves us with a really small population that's contacting our care center. And we're making all these investments in technology so that more people can go ahead and self-serve, which means that our agents in our care centers are just going to be talking to people call after call telling them no. Because what we want them to do is hold fast to, and we're regulated by banking, just like many of us in this room are. So you've got to be really careful that you're treating all your customers consistently. So you can't make exceptions. You've got to be cognizant of UDAP, which means that I am taking 120 calls today, and every single one of them, I'm telling somebody why I can't remove a fee or a finance charge. And it used to be that we would get easier calls like address changes and add an authorized buyer and I just got married. And those calls can all be done online anymore. They don't need an agent or a rep. And so my concern is, how are we going to keep our work environment fun? How are we going to keep our associates engaged? And how are we going to be really mindful of what the associate experience is like? That's going to be our challenge.
Yeah. So on that point, I have two things that I'm proud of. Is this year we started with a UES target to move our target to 60, and we're going to finish the year at 70. And that's just a post-call survey that says, would you recommend us to your family and friends? And we started out at 51. And there were a lot of conscious objectors, including in my leadership team, that didn't think we can do it because a lot of stuff was out of our control. But over the course of the year, we've been able to kind of seize the opportunities and then pivot and change our mindset as to what we can do to make that happen. And our members are benefiting from it. The second thing that is a dynamic I've never seen, I've spent 13 years in this space, 7 years in wireless, and then ironically I was with GE Capital for another 8 years for credit card financing. We used to almost be affiliated with the organizations. And in this industry, I get, not exaggerating, 10 times a day a customer tells us how great somebody is. And it's because you helped them because they were scared with their cancer medication, and it's very fulfilling. And we bang the drum loud. You know, we used to have a policy you can't reply to all in these distribution lists because we have a big company, 250,000 employees. I'm like, no, we're replying to all, we're banging the drum and stuff like that because we want to kind of proliferate that. We help people be well, and it doesn't have to be in a box in a traditional way. The part that really struggle with and what I'm not trying to solve, it's like what I want to change is the pace of engagement right now compared to when we started doing this or when I was doing this is like 5 times what it used to be. And the technology and telephony and all the stuff we have doesn't keep pace. And so what we do is we keep asking agents, PCCs, to do more and more. If you come into my center right now, most of my employees have 3 screens up because they have 3 different things, and we just can't get a consolidated app that can do that all for us. And we don't want to spend the money to do it because by the time you get it figured out, it's obsolete. Yep.
Excellent, thank you. Sean, also, thank you for bringing up things about your career and where you've gone, because the next question leads right into that. And I'd like to, these guys have made it to the top, right? They're leading their organizations, and for many of us, we want to get there. And how do we get there? And share with us, if you would, a little bit about the people or person who has been most influential for you and why.
Sure, I'll go first if you think you call me out. Call me out? No. I'm not going to say names because that would be bad. Because mine is the inverse of what you would think. It was working for the person I hated to go to work for the most. And I worked for that person for 3 years. And I went to work scared that if I didn't do something right, I would get in trouble or be fired. And then it helped me rethink my philosophy of how I treat people or how I want to be perceived. And I've even, like when I do leadership discussions at our trainings and stuff, it's like, do you want to be the person people are afraid of or the person people respect? And it helped me make a pivot in my career of I want to be somebody that people respect. And you can still have tough, direct, fair conversations with people, but treat them with respect. And by not sharing what they're not doing, I think you're disrespecting them. but I don't want to do it in a way, based on the engagement I had with this boss of mine, that makes them fear for their job or just not want to come to work. And when I'm dealing with leaders that are role models for the rest of the organization, and if I could feel that way in my previous role, I just don't want to cast that same shadow.
Well, I will name a name because it's somebody I really admire. So it's an old boss of mine, Randy Welton, and he worked with me at another care center. And it was a distribution center and a call center. And we had probably about 1,000 people there. And he knew everybody. So he was over the entire organization, and every day he would spend about 2 hours just going around talking to people, but he knew them all. He knew who they were, he knew their wife, he knew their kids, he knew what they did over the weekend. And I remember everybody, he was just genuinely liked. He was a genuinely nice man. And I had made a mistake, and I had to tell him about this mistake, and I was really nervous about it. And he was from the South, so he had the Southern drawl. And I, knocked on the door and was like, "Can I talk to you?" And he just looked at me and he goes, "Why don't you sit down? I think I know why you're here." And so I sat down, and I was just like, oh, shoot, like he knows already, right? And so I proceeded to tell him, and then he's like, "I can tell you feel really bad about this." And he's like, "And here's the, basically, here's the things that you already self-identified." But he's like, "Now," and he had this big grin on his face, and he's like, "I trust we will never, ever have this conversation again." I said, "You are right." But it was just such a nice way of taking ownership over a mistake that was made, but making you feel like it wasn't the end of the world, and making sure that it was memorable so that you didn't repeat it. And I thought, I've used that tactic many times in my position today when I have to address somebody that's maybe going off the rails a little bit and just needs to be redirected.
I will also name a name, if that's okay.
Definitely.
I had 2 working parents. I'm from Philadelphia, and so my household was taken care of by my great-grandmother. I had actually 2 working grandparents as well. So my great-grandmother was the one who took care of our house. I remember walking up the street with her and going towards the shopping retail center, and there was a long line wrapped around a building. It was pretty early in the morning, so I hadn't gone to school yet or anything. I guess I was about 4 or 5 years old. And I remember tugging on her summer dress and saying, "Hey, Nan, why are these people waiting outside of this building?" And she told me, "These people are here to cash their checks." And I didn't understand that. I didn't understand why in my neighborhood some families were waiting in line and some families weren't. So I took that to heart, and the older I got, and I landed here in Kansas City when I was about 17 years old. My dad actually works for Zurich Life Insurance, Dave Dantman. I don't know if you know Dave. So that's my father. Brought us to Kansas City with Transamerica Life Insurance at first, and we were transported from Philadelphia to Overland Park. I also started realizing there was a lot of storefronts in the Kansas City area as well. So I wanted to try to create a product that harnessed what my nan was trying to explain to me, that there are underbanked people out there. There are banks that have pushed away people out there. And in her optimistic point of view, it was just that they were there to cash their checks. And I've been able to use that optimistic point of view coupled with the idea of a solution. And I greatly appreciate my nan because at 75, 80 years old, she was carrying the weight of the laundry basket, making us dinner. It kind of always put the symbol in front of me that when you think you got it bad, there's always somebody that has it worse. And you can always be optimistic and help the next person that has it worse. So she's the one who brought that light into, that energy into me. So.
Wow, that's great. Thank you, all 3 of you. Those were awesome, and I think things that'll we can all apply individually. Kim, your courage in bringing something forward to your boss that was a problem, that takes some guts, right? How many of us have, "Ooh, gee, please don't make me tell you that." All right, so now let's talk about the range of responsibility and authority within your organization. What things do you have the authority to change? Hiring and firing, ability to purchase and then pick your hours, your location. Do you have the ability to work from home whenever you want, or let's talk about those things a little bit.
I do have the ability to choose my hours. I do have the ability to work from home. However, I do not do that ever. I do think it's very important on a daily basis to show your presence and show your worth. And even though you guys would like to consider me being a speaker here today, I'm still on the same ground as you, running forward, trying to learn the same things that we're all trying to accomplish. At the end of the day, I treat myself as an agent, and that's where I started. That's where I was on the phones. So I try to keep myself accountable for the full 8-9 hour day every day, and just so I can show that presence. As far as hiring and firing, coming from a smaller company that I'm performing at, I do all the hiring, I do all the firing. With Colt's help now with the hiring, but the first 2 or 3 years we've done all the recruiting, hiring, firing, personnel, insurance, you name it. I wear the HR hat, and sometimes it's comfortable, but other times, like I said, it's a learning experience. So it's one of those things that I deal with every day, with trying to learn from the person that's also entering the same situation that I'm in.
So I have the ability to choose my own hours, but I do very much the same thing that you do, and also to work from home. And I never really worked from home before, but now we have a huge work at home presence. So we've got over 500 care center agents. So I do work from home. I try to do work from home 1 day a month so I can have that experience, so I can relate better to what it must be like for them at home. But I really am a strong believer in visibility and being out there on the floor and letting people know that you're there. I think it's important to let them know that you're in it with them, and you're just not kind of like gilded in your office, totally unaware of what's going on out basically on your phone calls. I have absolutely no authority to purchase. I only have my morale budget. That is it. So from an IT technology perspective, we have like teams of experts that I struggle to have regular conversations with, and they guide me with what would be good for our organization. And then as far as the ability or authority to hire and fire, I can influence it to some degree, but we have grown so fast, so far, we're heavily regulated, and so now we have to do things in a certain way per our HR business partners. So in terms of, we use chemistry, which is like a pre-screening tool, and everything has become much more, I would say, we used to have a lot more autonomy, and now it's very structured. So there's a little bit of breathing room, but not much.
Yeah, my experience is real similar to hers. And I say that just for perspective because this is going to make you laugh, but our call center will generate for our company $12 billion this year. We do $1 billion in sales a month. And I can't buy anything either. So, I mean, I can buy pizza, right? So I got a card for pizza, right? Morale money, I like that. But we're the big machine. And so we're a high dollar, low margin. We do about 4 or 5% margin on what we do. And everything like hiring, firing, and all that other stuff is going to be shared service work that's provided for our whole company. So we really can't go off kilter. Now, I can make an executive decision every once in a while if one of our employees is showing their ass, and we can kind of escalate things. But mostly we're going to do stuff so we don't get sued. And to you said it nice. I'm gonna be a little more direct, but we're just trying to cover ourselves to make sure that we're doing it right, and that it's got this due process and stuff like that. Now, I do every once in a while work from home, only if it's conducive. My daughter's last year at home before she goes away to college, so I'm helping her out sometimes, taking her to school or do stuff like that. I would do it more if I could actually see my laptop because I need reading glasses. So I don't like to do that. I'm actually similar. As an operations leader, you have to show yourself and be in the operations, and you got to role model the right behavior. So I'm in the office typically early and leave late.
Thank you. We're running a little close. I can't believe how much fun we're having up here and how time is flying. So we're running a little bit close to the end, and I wonder, just show of hands, how many of you have questions you would like to ask the panel? Okay, we got one. Oh, boy, we've got a few out there. Then I'm going to say we'll just, let's go to their questions. Michelle, would you give us a hand, please? So somebody raise your hand, and we'll bring a mic over to you and let you start asking some questions.
Just wondering, what are some future contact center trends that you see coming up?
Well, millennials is one. We have 95% of our staff is millennials, and this idea has come up several times just in these new meetings. Keeping people enthusiastic, happy, and feeling like they're actually a part of something, I think is similar to some of the answers that we've just had, is really important. So the trends that I'm seeing are people not thinking that these things are important or not being enthusiastic. And I think that, part of what we were explaining up here is that with the call center world and technology advancing, it's eliminating some jobs for humans, right? So as humans, we need to be smarter than the robots for a moment that we program and figure out what the next step is, because robots won't be able to handle the next step, right? So I think the trend is going to be how to implement the next piece of technology that removes a seat from your center, but then adds another seat to potentially sales or something that has an outcome that's beneficial for, for the profitability of the company at hand.
Yeah, I would say probably more of a focus, and again, this is to address some of the concerns that millennials have, the associate experience. So really, what is the associate experience from the recruiting process all the way through training to onboarding? And part of that, kind of a customer relationship management piece, really the omni-channel experience. So when we talk about the customer experience, we have enough data about that customer to know when they're in the IVR, when they're online, what they're buying, how often they're buying, how often they're spending, so that we can make that experience very personalized to them, so that customer feels like we really know who they are. And I think that's going to be something that's going to be critically important as customers, everyone's fighting for the same market. So, and in part with that is like the increase just in technology and tools.
Yeah, two real quick so we can get more questions is we survey our employees on how their leadership is doing. We call it employee engagement. And so we are starting to treat our employees like customers instead of employees, which is very important. I hear Brian saying that indirectly, and I agree with that wholeheartedly, because you're only as good as your people or the team you assemble, and they will only go the extra mile if you're treating them with dignity and respect. And that's not always something we've done. We've been cost conscious sometimes too much. And then the other trend I see that's important so you don't become a Kodak or a GE is most contact centers and businesses try a one-size-fits-all approach. And you really got to figure out your segmentation strategy so that your millennials are getting a text message when their drug is due, and that your 80-somethings are getting a phone call. And you got to tailor your approach to your customers, because they'll leave. And even in Brian's business, in your business, my business, if you don't figure out how to, and it doesn't have to be crazy, you just got to have a plan for different approaches and different access to your product. That's why businesses go out, is because you don't cater to your customers.
I think it's on. There we go. There now. It's just interesting you hear, Sean, because United Health Group, about 3 years ago, I created a team of 28 interpreters, 7 different languages, in Minnetonka for your team, for your company. So, hi. But actually, what I wanted to ask was, all 3 of you, how are you handling that when we have a diversification of people coming into this country? Some of them don't speak English very well or would not be comfortable. An elderly person who might speak a little English but is actually a Mandarin speaker, for example, when they call and they're kind of concerned. How are you each handling outgoing and incoming calls for people who are not English speakers?
Sure. I got a real quick answer. I think we've had some of this conversation when we were at Demdeco. We use AT&T Language Line, I believe one of your competitors, and part of the reason isn't our problem of solving for Spanish. We traditionally use 160 languages a month because of how big we are. And so we need the flexibility for the Asian culture and the Asian languages on the West Coast that we support, and we support the whole country. So building a Spanish team or doing that just wasn't fruitful for us. And it's a little kludgy, any kind of three-party way. Some of our members don't actually like, but that's what works most effective for us because of our scale and size. The other things we have to do because of laws is California language provisions and stuff. We have to send out statements in Spanish or different languages, and you know, there's only a couple languages that you have to do that in. But we have our attorneys that make sure we're doing that right, and if those people choose to have it in that in their primary language.
I think it's a great question. We service, I would say, 95% of our customers are English speaking, 5%, 4% may be Spanish speaking. So we have 4 or 5 bilingual agents on staff at all times. But the tricky part is the compliance. I have a compliance officer in-house, and everything from scripting all the way to email marketing is all compliant ready. So to have one person that speaks Mandarin and that person might be able to sell me X amount of loans per year probably is going to outweigh the cost of having some type of compliance officer that can monitor that person as well. So in this scenario, the only other group that has broken through is probably the Spanish-speaking group that has a large presence in Texas or that of Missouri where we're licensed. And we do a great job of handling those customers. But again, the compliance factor kind of outweighs the reward in that way.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we're very similar. So compliance recently did an overview of some of our practices, and unless you have a brand that has a contract with us, we removed all of our Spanish acquisition channels except for 2, just because of the compliance oversight.
Well, I guess the follow-up question, are you using telephonic interpreters for that? Or do you use strict, we were talking about staff, but I'm talking about, if someone called in and they spoke Hindi, how would you handle that?
We wouldn't, I mean, we would not be servicing the call.
All right, we're up at 1 o'clock, and so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Hopefully some of the panelists can stay, and if you have questions, feel free to come on up and ask them questions offline, but we probably have to wrap up. Next year, we have to schedule this for longer somehow.
I agree, Vince. It's
Yeah.
going to be on our survey.
Okay.
I agree.
Very good. Well, I'd like to thank all 3 panelists for your time and sharing the information. That's not easy to come up in front of a big group, but you guys did an awesome job. And thank you all for your questions and attendance today.
All right, those questions were bomb. They were great.
This is for you.
Give me a quick mic test. Check.
Testing, testing. What was that Taylor would say?
What's that?
Yeah.
All right, and we're rolling.
Thank you. Let's change the focus to technology. Imagine that the technologist wants to talk about technology. You know, actually, I don't think of myself as a technologist. I think of myself more like a solutionist. Solutions.
So really quick, I would say since you weren't talking directly to Cam and any of the rest of the time, I would face your,
Look around. Okay, got it.
yeah, to the room.
All right. Sorry, one more time.
No problem. All right, and rolling.
Let's change the focus to technology. Imagine that the technologist wants to talk about technology. Well, actually, I'm not sure that I think of myself as a technologist. I think I'm more of a solutionist. As a solutionist, it's things like the implementation of people, process, and technology, and specifically the results, achieving the stated objective that is most exciting to me. And frankly, that's the partnership that Vitech provides in working with our clients. It's the commitment to achieve the results that makes the difference.
Awesome. Cool. How'd you feel about it?
I think
Need
that
another
was
take?
good. Looking at what has occurred in the past is great for learning. However, I would be remiss if I did not. Start that one more time.
No problem.
Looking at the past and learning from that is great. However, I would be remiss if I did not want to talk a little bit about the future, because that's where the excitement is, the cutting edge. And you know, wherever there's cutting, there's also bleeding. Just comes with the game, right? So if you can believe this, 30 years ago, Vitek started selling voicemail systems. Voicemail at that time was cutting edge. And the most common objection we would hear were things like, I don't want my customers talking to a machine. I want them to talk to our secretary. Now think about it today. When you connect to a secretary or someone who's going to take a live message, don't you get a little bit frustrated when you have to spell your name or repeat the phone number? How silly we are when we look in hindsight at some of the things that prevented us from moving forward.